Hello, everyone. So, welcome. We are now going to continue on this spotlight discussion with a panel that will be moderated by Mike. And let me introduce you the two speakers who have joined. So, we have Fabio De Martino. He is Associate Director, Finance and Information Management, Business Process Improvement at BioMarin Pharmaceutical. So Fabio is an associate director at BioMarin Pharmaceutical, developing and overseeing the plan, prioritization, management, and execution of the most critical finance and information management process improvement opportunities in the company. And we have Metli Dalvi. She is a senior portfolio and project manager at 23andMe in the US. She's supporting the advancement of multiple therapeutic programs to successful and timely decision points throughout target identification, target validation, drug discovery, and drug development, and enabling portfolio prioritization and decision making at 23andMe. Very glad to have you. Also have a third speaker who will join later. So David. So I let you continue, Mike. Stage is yours, and feel free to continue the. Um, I think David is trying to join us as well. So you can include him when he joins. So
Okay, very good. Well, thanks, Mithan, and really appreciate the opportunity to drive a discussion today. I'm going to try and contribute, not just pump you guys for answers as well. So, it really, the last couple of days, as I've said, we've had a lot of folks talking about their internal innovation and managing the trouble in front of them. Through my talk just a few minutes ago, I highlighted, a lot of the innovation we're working on is coming in from outside. And we're getting a lot of the internal innovation managed through external partnerships, CROs and CMOs. Hardly anybody is doing all of that work in-house themselves anymore, whether it comes to CMC or clinical development. So I'd kind of like to hear from Madeline and Fabio, kind of your views of how project management is involved in navigating the external landscape, whether it's providers or innovation partners. And then I'll share some of my own perspectives from point of view of Lilly. So Madeline, would you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for having me on this panel. I'm really excited to be here. I've been attending the sessions for the last 2 days, and there's a wealth of knowledge here. So really appreciate the opportunity. I think to answer your question, I'll add a little bit of spin in terms of external innovation that comes in through collaboration. So in my day-to-day role here as a portfolio manager and also an alliance manager for the collaboration that we have with a larger pharma company, I'm involved in looking at the programs that we jointly evaluate in terms of novel targets. And for those of you who don't know, 23andMe is a consumer, basically genetic testing company, and we have saliva kits, basically where we do ancestry reports, health reports, as well as we have a therapeutic division where we are tapping into this wealth of information that we are gaining through our database and really trying to give back to our customers in terms of identifying novel targets that other companies haven't pursued before. And so that's the focus of our innovation and what drives us in our therapeutics organization as well. And so I think there's a lot of value in terms of partnering with a larger pharma company like GSK, where we tap into each other's resources. And clearly GSK joined this collaboration with us because they're interested in this novelty that we bring to the table. So in terms of exactly deciding what to add to the portfolio, it really depends on the priorities of each company. And so we are heavily invested in targets that are focused on genetic evidence. And so we are looking at this database, like I mentioned earlier, to mine for targets really which might have associations through GWAS and PWAS analysis. in specific disease areas. And that's where we bring the novelty to the table and add to our collaboration portfolio. So I'll stop at that and let Fabio address this question as well.
Absolutely. In terms of external collaboration and how the PMO is positioned on that, everything starts from the leadership. So as a PMO and project manager and program manager, at the beginning, we help and support the CEO and other decision makers to elaborate their vision for the 5 years, 10 years, and from them having a way, a process, a structure to cascade this vision to the year and the today operation. So from there is a consultancy piece that comes from, okay, let's elaborate the vision of a company and the strategy, and then how we can execute on this strategy. And this comes the different partnership that if a company wants to expand the market share, or acquire new product or collaborate with other companies. And this is part of the 5 years, 10-year strategy of the CEO and other decision makers. The PMO put in place processes and structure to make this happen. So everything starts from the top. I'm sure that also from the other companies are the same. And the PMO, project manager, and myself, it's to be catalyst and help to visualize and make things happen. So it's a lot of work, especially on the side of the PMO, gathering information and help the decision makers to make those decisions. Because one thing that is important, at least for my experience, for the company that I've been collaborating with, the PMO plays a key role on helping and supporting the leaders to make the decision that they are supposed to do. There are some decisions that it's their job, and our job is to support them.
Great. Natalie, I don't know if you're involved at all with ASAP, the Association of Strategic Alliance Professionals. If you're aware of that organization, you can actually go out and get some training if you haven't. I know about 20 years ago, Lilly began this journey of converting from a fully integrated pharmaceutical company to a fully integrated pharmaceutical network. We really went big in terms of kind of outsourcing activities that we feel we didn't need to own or control. And, at that time, we created a number of strategic relationships, really gained some experiences doing things across the entire value chain. And a number of our professional project managers went out and got ASAP certified. So many of them were on the interface managing work like you, Natalie, with major partners. Peer Pharma, as well as, I would say, key partners in the technology space, such as, the example of 23andMe necessarily provides. I think there's a different level of risk management that you have to be thinking about from an enterprise risk management perspective or portfolio risk management perspective, especially today with, I would say, hackers and threats. And in the last year, anybody working on COVID became a suspect for that. And, it's just a different level of enterprise risk management comes through working with outside providers where you're not control of their IT systems or, their habits. And so there's a number of things that I think stretch out into our portfolio risk that aren't necessarily quantified by most of our, large pharma or companies operating a portfolio. I think we're all skating on thin ice sometimes. And thankfully, some of the bigger partners have not had these kinds of nasty experiences. When it comes to project selection or insourcing versus outsourcing, can either of you comment on kind of the decision frame or considerations that your senior management are exercising when it comes to making these insourcing or outsourcing kinds of choices? Fabio, maybe start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a very good question, because now that we are more and more working in a global environment, definitely there are different parameters that leadership and a company can take into account when outsourcing or developing or working in-house. And simply put, basically what's happening at a certain time of the year, and some company may have this process 2 times a year, depending on the magnitude of a project, maybe once in a year, once in a couple of years. There is this intake process where the different leaders submit their proposal for review. And what happens is that those projects that can be multi-year project gets evaluated based on different parameters. One of the parameters, as you may be aware, is in the outsourcing space, it may be economics, right? So it's cheaper to outsource to an external company. Another parameter is about knowledge. I know that we were sharing during the conference about the knowledge that the company and the people have, and the knowledge that can be leveraged. There are some expertise that are in a company. There are some other expertise that are better in outside company. And then there are other parameters as well, like in manufacturing, the capacity. For example, you saw that Pfizer and other manufacturer of a vaccine, they are signing deals with the external manufacturing company because they don't have the capacity to produce this high volume of vaccines. So this is where comes to play Lonza, Catalent, and other Thermo Fisher, where they have a bigger networking capacity. And there are other considerations as well. If the material or whatever is produced is high risk of IP, there are some product that maybe it's better for risk mitigation having in-house, even though it's a little bit more expensive, right? Maybe where the IP content may be very valuable, and other parameters depending on the company and their
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Madly. Given you, just kind of your business model has to look a little bit different than ours here at Lilly or at Fabio's company, BioMarin. Give us a sense of how much work you guys are doing inside, how much work you're doing in collaboration, what your network looks like with respect to academic collaborations, which I'm sure provide a lot of value and insights to the pile of data you guys are sitting on.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually have like a research division, and by research, I don't mean the typical benchmark that we do in lab, but rather adding to our wealth of database. So basically diversifying, for instance, the customer population that we've captured. And so that research services group interacts heavily with academia in terms of identifying novel ways of parsing the data or adding to the data set, and then collaborating really to gain access to that extra data that would enhance the value and really boost the power of the genetic strength. And so on that side, we do invest heavily in academic partnerships. And then on the therapeutic side, majority of our innovation as well as the bench work is driven through our collaboration with GSK, like I mentioned earlier. And so we have in-house lab capacity at 23andMe as well. I think most people are not familiar with our therapeutics arm, but we do have like a proper lab space where we do our execution of the project work. And at the same time, we do tap into our partner strengths in terms of finding those complementary areas where we could do certain activities and they could share by doing some other activities that they have expertise in. And so really on that side, our collaboration is like heavily invested in terms of not just like I mentioned, the partner organization, but also in terms of outsourcing certain activities, depending on where the expertise lies within the company, and at the same time where we want to expand, but at the same time we don't yet have the in-house capabilities. And I just like mention a few examples wherein if we want to move certain projects from research into development stage. We are still developing that in-house capabilities for development. And so for CMC and those kind of activities, we do tap into third-party like CROs to help us move those projects faster forward. And so, yeah, it's a lot of like mix of academic partnership, collaboration with GSK, as well as third-party leverage.
Yeah, our topic really is, in some ways, how do you pick the best things to work on? So I kind of want to come back to that. We're all, in some ways, managing a portfolio or see within our own companies the impact of portfolio decisions. One of the questions I had teed up for us to be thinking about is, what are the best practices for killing projects? So, I don't know how good your respective organizations are for managing all the pennies, but killing projects sometimes is really difficult. Sometimes we end up, instead of killing something, we just delay. Right? We, in some ways, downsize the investment until it goes away on its own. But maybe let's pivot a little bit and talk about what are the best practices you guys have experienced for managing those projects that are the wounded gazelles.
Yeah, I can get started and then let Fabio add in his insights as well. So this topic is particularly close to me because we recently killed a project just last month, and I was the project manager on it. So I can really relate to this question a lot in terms of whether it was a good project or a bad project. I would say it's a subjective term. It was good in the sense that it was a novel target, a good strategic fit with where our company wanted to head to. It offered us a differentiation potential. And I'm really getting into some of the criteria that we use for portfolio selection as well. And so novelty and differentiation, strategic fit, they're at the top of our list when we select projects for a portfolio. And so in that sense, it was a good project. But at the same time, like I mentioned, it was a novel target. And so it was draining a lot of resources for the company because we were still trying to understand the mechanism of action, the biology. And even though we knew that it was probably a good association, the disease area, because that's what the database told us, we still didn't know what MOA to hit and how would our therapies essentially help us in that disease area. And so really the opportunity costs we figured out were very high because we were investing so many resources in the project. And it didn't really make sense to put a lot of weightage on the project, no matter how much we adored it. And so in the end, it was the right decision to kill the project. I also did a lessons learned retrospective analysis with all the stakeholders right after we killed it to just get a sense of how the stakeholders felt about it, whether they reacted positively or negatively. And I was actually pleasantly surprised to find out that many of the stakeholders took it in a positive way. They understood the reasoning for killing the project at that point of time. It had come to a go, no-go inflection point where we had to make that decision whether we should delay the timeline, invest more resources to still try to parse out the mechanism, or whether we should just kill it and use those resources in other high priority projects in our portfolio. And so it was really nice to see through that retrospective survey that the stakeholders also took it very well. And we were able to pivot those resources very quickly to a different project and also avoid team burnout in that case because the same resources were being used on both projects. And so that's a very recent example that really resonates well with the question that you asked.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Mathilde.
Yeah.
Fabio, do you have any curious examples that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I will throw the word change management, as this is around, changing definitely when there is time to kill a project for different reasons. I mean, it's a change management effort that happens not only with the leadership, but also with the team that had been working on the project and also with the company communicating. So recently we have been doing a triage of our portfolio for the same reason that has been shared, because sometimes we are eager to work on a lot of stuff, but the resources are those, and maybe you cannot hire more people, right? So you need to make a decision. And basically, the decision happens based on different variables and connected to the goal, the 5-year strategy. But when this happened, and it has happened as well recently, we have been doing a lot of things in the space of change management. One of the things is also celebrating where the project that we're going to be close, the good work that has been done so far. So one of the stigma sometimes that happen in a company is that if you kill a project is because it's the failure of the sponsor, of the project manager, or whatever. So we try to take out this label and, communicating the reason why the project has been closed and celebrate. So we hold celebration for project that been closed even earlier and celebrate the good work that has happened until that point.
That's great. Maybe I'll share a couple of stories from my experiences prior to Lilly. I went through 4 mergers in my career before I joined Lilly. I started with Rohr Pharmaceuticals. We merged with Rhône-Poulenc, which was essentially the French version of DuPont. They were a chemical concern that had a pharma business, and so we merged with their pharma business. Later, we bought Phison's pharmaceutical development. Basically, they had sold off their research part of their organization. We didn't change our name at the time, but that did result in some, I would say, organizational changes. And then finally, we merged with Herbst Marion Roussel. So Rhône-Poulenc Rohr merged with Herbst Marion Roussel to become Aventis. That's a lot of history. What I saw in each one of those events is projects that you knew were over-championed or not going to provide stunning outcomes for patients. They took a hit. Like, those were the things that got cut. I would say in those events, those particular champions were either out or very focused on their next job in the new organization. And at those points, there's just I would say, non-emotional assessment. And by definition, half the projects in the portfolio don't fit the new expectations for the combined company. In essence, right? You have to make twice as much money in a merged kind of portfolio. And so naturally, those things, take a hit. So, when I came to Lilly, Lilly's never gone through a merger like that. And it was an interesting approach that I saw in terms of the portfolio management. Lilly had a pretty, I would say, dispassionate approach to portfolio management in the, I would say, development area. In the research area, there was, had to be a lot more personal conviction from the sponsors that owned those areas. And so when we have, chief scientific officers in a particular therapeutic area or therapeutic area VP change, move on to their next assignment, that was often time for the new guy or gal to come in and make a heavy cut on what they were going to commit to. There's more, I would say, personal career attachment to those kinds of discovery targets, especially when there's no proof of concept out there on the planet yet. You have to have a lot of conviction. And I think, Fabio, you hit the nail on the head. When there is a termination for cause, technical cause, for example, there has to be an aptitude for organizational change management. That people lose their day job or the focus of what they've been, sunk in for the last couple of years. This hits me really cold in the external innovation space. I know if Lilly's going to do a deal, the in is full. When we bring something in, we have to stop things to afford it. We don't have the people to carry it out. We don't have the funds or availability in CMC, et cetera, to get work done on the inbound asset without stopping significant amount of work from the internal portfolio where we have high conviction, right? So we are, attempting to improve the value of our portfolio through external innovation. But, we are also then on the edge of supporting, potentially keeping those assets moving forward with somebody else's energy. So when we do have something inbound, we almost always see a couple of outbound things come through my team as well. And then we become partly, the seller, looking to find an interested party to continue to carry those things forward. I think the hardest ones to manage are the non-technical attrition, things where you have to make, a termination decision or put it on the shelf because the organization just can't afford it. They've had, they have great success in some other project that's going to redirect a lot of the funding, and therefore your project has to be shelved or terminated. It just doesn't make the cut. Those things typically come out of portfolio kinds of discussions, or they make themselves available when senior leadership changes, and you recognize that something, conviction you thought was there isn't there in the person responsible to take over the area. So I think these are a couple of the things that you see, organizations struggle with. These kill decisions are tough ones, especially when the conviction is high. When it's a technical kill, everybody just has to deal with it. When it's a non-technical kill, it's, I would say, a much, much more difficult struggle. I think we're just a minute away from the end of the session. I want to thank Fabio and Matli for their contributions here and for your engagement. I think we covered a couple of the topics that we were meant to cover. Certainly not enough time. Hopefully the next time we meet at a conference like this, we'll actually be standing next to the coffee machine in a hotel somewhere. Looking forward to that. It was great meeting you all, and appreciate everything you had to share. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Wonderful session, and thanks for sharing, and thanks for being so generous. We will have a little break, short break now, 15 minutes, and we'll resume in 15 minutes. So please join us in 15 minutes, and feel free to use the networking for this moment.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.